specialized in doing all kind of maintenance information for Dassault, the French airplanes, the fighters. And my job was to do mostly training films for maintenance on those Mirage F1 airplanes. And besides this, I was also doing commercial film and animation. This is my background. And working with my friend Jerzy. We were doing a lot of those films using animation stand, you know, backlit animation at that time. This was what used to be done. And I was a very big fan of Robert Abel and Associates work. This was just starting in Los Angeles in the 80s. And what was starting was the use of vector graphics to create animation film. And a company, a US company called Evans in Sutherland was already a simulation company, but they were providing those vector graphic screen. And Robert Abel spun up this technology to develop all kind of ability to produce animation films. This was produced. So we just wanted to do the same. And at one point at Sogitech, we had an Evans Sutherland vector graphic display as well, only to film the screen because I was a big fan of the sharp graphics out of this. So let me tell you about the story of what happened in Sogitech. So Sogitech was working mainly for Dassault, and at one point they was awarded a contract to provide real-time flight simulation system. So the first reaction was to go into the US, where the early technology was burgeoning there. And they met with a group of guys, Gary Demos and Triple I, because as part of the technology they used, they were already working with Information International Inc., Triple I, which was providing very high-resolution scanners and printers for to print film for the printing industry. And Gary Demos and John Whitney started to develop some tools and technology to be able to generate potentially real-time simulation images. So they got a contract from Sogitech, and fortunately, they just they never delivered it. They never delivered in time, and for this reason, Sogitech decided to develop its own technology, which is great. So Claude Michelam was the head of research at Sogitech at that time, and he was the, let's say, the guru for anything related to computer graphics, and he was the guy behind the real-time image generator, and a very open-minded person. So I spent a lot of time with him, and I convinced him to spin off his technology so that he could develop a software so that we could use basically the same computers during the night and the weekends to do some animation out of this. So together with the CEO of Sogitech, who was also quite excited by this idea, and we had two engineers. Alain Béard was working in the Claude Michelam's team as an engineer, and later on we brought David Selzin. He was a computer scientist in Stanford, and he went spend 1 year with us, and he helped us to develop, in fact, the second generation of software. And now he's back to, I think he's working at Microsoft. So here is the team in 1984. This is a picture we took just before SIGGRAPH in '84. So you've got everybody here. So I mentioned about Alain Béard, the software developer. He was in charge of our technology. Dominique Pochard, who is an animator. Veronique. and Jerzy, who is here with us, Claude Mechoulam, the computer guru, Alain Gracq, the animator as well, with Daniel Poirot and Annie Coffret. Sorry. Myself, Christian Fouché, who is now working at ILM. Eric Mizès, who is in Los Angeles. Françoise is retired. And Bill is an art director that I met in Los Angeles, and I convinced him to come with us to work on this, to bring some good, interesting style in the graphics we're producing. And that's it. The first one is especially for Jean-Michel. Is still in the audience? This was an opening credit that was directly output from the real-time simulator. And in fact, this was used by a TV station in France, and Jean-Michel was involved in this. He has his name on the credit, so I wanted to show this. So I'm going to show you the first demo that we produced, which includes, it's very old, it's 83, so it includes a lot of test stuff, but it's interesting to see now. This is some of the vector-graphic things that we were doing at that time. So we were testing all kind of new technology, including laser system to capture models. You know, it's very rough. Some animation tests, and of course we were also helping to build a database for simulation. We did also training film, as I mentioned before, using this technology. And one of the first movies was for Renault, Electronic Now. It was their first car with a lot of electronic inside. This was a time for Tron, so the movie was just released. And it was, as you remember, the first real feature film with a lot of computer graphics. So we didn't use a VAX as they did at TDI. We used a Perkin-Elmer, which was equivalent, and I think we had it was a huge computer with the power of you know, 10% of a Mac that I have in front of me now. Anyway, so from there we started to do we did our first commercial film, and so the story of this was a friend of ours, Jean-François Henry, an art director, was dealing directly with a client. It was an importer for a Japanese company, Sharp, and we could convince him to do this commercial because at that time nobody trusted communicating products with computer graphics, but we could at one point convince them to model all their products, and we created a choreography that ended up to this commercial. You want to introduce it?
Well, as you will see, this film was pretty shocking at the time because, as Xavier said, sometimes computer graphics would be used for logos or some kind of technical details, but to actually show a realistic looking product in those days was like unheard of. But I just let you watch the film, and I'll say something about it after.
Photocopieur, Sharp. Machine à écrire, Sharp. Ordinateur, caisse enregistreuse, Sharp. Calculatrice, bureautique, Sharp.
So, like, the alibi of actually showing this film in CGI was the science fiction ending. This made it acceptable.
Yeah. So, this film was extremely useful for us to promote ourselves in the advertising industry. And, but unfortunately, at that time, the French agency were not very open to this kind of visuals. So we went over on the other side of the channel to visit production companies and meet with directors in UK. And we had a lot of success there. And we started to work for a couple of well-known directors. And one of the most interesting commercial that we had to produce was with a couple of very renowned directors at that time, Rocky Morton and Annabelle Jankel, and we did this Quattro commercial that you supervised, Jay-Z.
Yeah, Rocky Morton and Annabelle Jankel had a very small boutique hot house creative studio. They were very open-minded people, and they were always looking for a new, edgy thing. They had the direct contact with the client, which I believe was the Pepsi-Cola company, who was trying to launch a new product. Now, this product was supposed to be a little edgy and appeal to the bad boy instinct, right? So they came, they saw what we were doing, and they asked us to collaborate on this film. They were very, very good people to work with. I personally learned a lot from them. And unfortunately, the product was a flop. But the film had a huge success all over the world and helped both their careers and ours.
Yeah, so this movie, I mean, the execution is dated, of course, today, but I mean, the concept still works quite fine today. So after this, we'll go to another commercial that we did for the French market that you, Yossi, directed.
Actually, it was a French-German co-production.
Okay.
Because I mean, I was sort of destined to work for products that were going to be flops. After Quattro, here comes Restore, please.
S'essouffle, il consomme trop. Un remède, Restore. Restore combat l'usure interne du moteur. Votre moteur consomme moins et votre voiture reprend des ailes. Restore, reconstituant moteur.
Now, this commercial had, I don't know why, but it had a really huge success. It won like prizes everywhere. But I have, I learned something very important in this commercial about the soundtrack. This was not the soundtrack I wanted. I had actually worked with Gabriel Yared, who I think most of you know now, and who has been nominated and has won an Oscar for The English Patient as being one of the foremost film composers in the world. He was, of course, like all of us, much younger then, not as famous, but just as talented. And I had asked him to work on a special soundtrack for this film. And the agency didn't like it. And in actual fact, they were right. They were right and I was wrong. And I understood that you couldn't be, when you're showing something very new at the time, you have to give people something they can relate to. And the soundtrack, at the time, there was a Japanese robot that played Bach. And so the reference to that, they took this soundtrack and put it on that, and it worked very well.
Okay, so now we are in the... Could you pause it just a second, please? We are in the 86, 87, 88, so we produce commercial and corporate films, and also we contributed to a feature film, L'Unique, that Christian Guillon was supposed to present today, but that was our, it was a pretty large movie with a lot of visual effects, a lot of shots at that time, and again, since everything we generated by computer had to be optically combined, it was quite heavy and cumbersome. So at this point, everything you've seen is Gouraud-based. It's very basic computer graphics. So over the last 2 years, in 87, 88, we worked on a new software. David Salazin contributed to it. And so that we wanted to produce a short film to emphasize both our creative capability and what could be done with this new software. So Jerzy came with this idea and directed it.
I just wanted to say, at the time still, the agencies were reluctant to admit that computer graphics could do anything except cold and technological things. We were a little bit victims of our first successes. And one of the creative aims of the film was to prove to them that we could work in a completely different genre, in a different level, and we based this film on the codes of French Boulevard Theater. So, please.
Mon mari.
All right. So now we are in 88, and as Jean-Charles presented before, basically Thomson, Ina decided to reorganize the landscape of computer graphics in France, and Sogitech accepted the idea of selling this group to create a new company, Ex Machina. I have an interesting story about the name Ex Machina. When I proposed a name to the group, like a couple of months after the company was created, the following day, I found this letter on my desk. I mean, basically, all the people, I mean, the main artists from our group, they refused the name. They thought it was not appropriate at all to name a computer graphics company Ex Machina. I love the name, but not really. And in fact, I mean, this was a big lesson for me for internal communication. I did it very wrong. So when later it came to sell them the logo, I did it differently and spent a lot of time before presenting this, and it was successful. So, Ex Machina, we'll go to next video. When the group merged between the TDI production group and the people coming from Sogitech, we had this great opportunity to have a film to produce for the bicentennial of the French Revolution. It was called Paris 1989, so it's about like exactly 20 years now. And this film was including a lot of innovation. It was, for us, the first time we were using Explore as a software, and even Explore including a lot of new features. And for the first time, this was very storytelling-oriented short film. It was about 20 minutes, and included a combination of 3D computer graphics and 2D animation with 4 characters.
The film was made for a temporary expo which was situated in the center of Paris next to the Louvre, and was projected in loop fashion in 2 different cinemas. The film was directed by myself and José Xavier, who some of you must know as being a very well-known 2D animation director. Now, these are films that followed, that were sort of milestones. This is our first film we did for an American market, 70 millimeter. One of the major films we did for the Japanese market, which Xavier developed in setting up a bureau in Tokyo. 3D film for Panasonic. This, one of our departments specialized in expo films and theme park films, and this was where I was majorly employed at this time.
So we believe that the market was very limited for us in doing visual effects for feature film, because the French movie industry is not really in need for visual effects, or at least visual effects that you don't see. So at that time, at least. So we focus a lot on the large format and special event, and that means a lot Asia and America. That's why we opened this office in Tokyo. At one point, half of the work we were doing was coming from Japan. And another piece from Yosi.
Another piece. Now this is a little later. I wish it shouldn't actually be in this sequence, but it was a little confusing. It was our first 3D ride for the Americans, because we'd done a lot of 3D stuff for other countries, but when the Americans finally caught onto it, they were very interested to have that as well. And the last piece was a little other 3D ride we did for
Hi guys, you're really in
Toshiba,
luck today. There ain't no better automatic pilot in this
which was
godforsaken dump than
quite a bit of fun
Cleaning,
and
yours truly.
very free.
Yes.
The anecdote is that you'll see there's one of the words had to be cut to be able to be shown in the US.
Nice day for a ride to hell.
It was the word hell.
So in Ex Machina, we worked with several talented directors like Jerzy and François Garnier here in the room, Pascal Wong, and also another one called Pascal Roulin. And I have a couple of films that he did with us also that I would like to show to conclude this presentation. The first one is a Belgium commercial that we did back in the Sogitech time, and this is how I met with Pascal. And it's interesting because back to those days, it was a combination of live action and computer graphics, which is not that obvious, but just by editing, there is no optical in between the two images. Please.
Qu'est-ce que c'est beau! Oh là là! Regarde, regarde!
Texaco, superstar.
This is back to 93. this is a sequence for an IMAX 3D film with CG background and effects we did.